my beeper,
That's
Grandma.
Oh, you gotta put that back on. I gotta show. This is the emergency beeper for Graham.
It's Christopher's future. Push the button and it vibrates and it goes ding, 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 ding,
Mom,
ding.
we gotta do the podcast.
Right.
Get your cart to come over. Yeah. So we went out last night for May the 4th or whatever, right? Star Wars.
Cinco de Mayo.
Well, no,
Cinco de Mayo.
yeah, but no, May the 4th for Star Wars. They did a bunch of Star Wars themed things.
Oh, you freaking
Yeah,
nerds.
I was like, first off, I've never seen Star Wars. Oh, hey, Mom, you want to know how to get serious hate online? The bar smelled like what I figured a Star Wars convention would be like. It was fun. There was a lot of people, but I don't, you know me, I've never seen Star Wars, so I had no real care. And I was making people mad because I would go around being like this. Which is, I think, Star Trek, right? Yeah.
Star Trek.
Yeah. Like I said there's a couple guys, because we got there a little early, and they were like, yeah, I don't, like, we're super into Star Wars. I was like, I never seen the movies. You would have thought I killed someone. Like, that's the look that they gave me, but.
You've ever seen the movie?
Yeah. They're like, what? So, yeah, it was fun. We were out late, though. What did you say?
Exciting Saturday night. Where was it? At a particular place?
It was at right across from Cypress Hall. That place. Pinky's, yeah. I'm surprised you remember that. That's crazy that you remember that. But yeah, so I mean, we went to a couple places, but yeah.
I hope you didn't give your real name while you were there.
No, I went by Steve. I was like, yeah. So, but no, it was fun. We were out late, and then waking up was brutal. But as you can tell, my voice is kind of gone.
From screaming all those Star Wars songs or something?
Well, no. Oh, so what it was just Star Wars themed. They didn't have any actual, like, if they were playing Star Wars music, your boy's out of there.
Trivia question.
Yeah, what?
Was Yoda born?
A little person in an R2-D2 costume. I'm good. But let's just say that there was a point in the night where a lot of the Jabba the Hutts showed up, and that's when we had to go.
He said, "Oh, you came in costume."
Yeah. It was not pretty. So that's when we were like, okay, time to go. But
yeah.
Just because there's the one thing about New Bern with every place, not just Pinky's. So for those of you that don't know anything about New Bern, it's a historical place where they haven't really touched any of the buildings. So everything's narrow, right? So you take so most things are built upwards rather than spread out, right? It's a city. The problem with that is when the belugas come, there's only so much floor space. Otherwise, you're getting elbowed. So when you got your own orbit, just don't show up to New Bern. That's kind of the rule.
You'll be frustrated.
I'm gonna be. Oh, I can't wait to get wrecked online for that one. But yeah, no, it was fun. We all had fun. But yeah, Brooke and I just kind of just people watch. We just kind of do our thing, and then like when someone comes in, it's just that we shoot each other a glance. We're like, we know what's about that. So, how's the week been with Graham?
Okay, she's okay. She's doing her own getting up in the night.
Nice.
She only rings if she has like an emergency. So I can't complain about that. We're taking a turn. Like last night, she just rang once at 2, and she keeps herself pretty busy. The only hard part I was saying to answer today is now we're trying to schedule trips upstate.
Yeah.
And it's never enough, you know. Why does that? I gave her 2 weeks options. Why only 2? And why can't I go up to the house? And why does he have to come down? And why do we have to leave this day? It's never enough, you know? So we're having a little battle with that. And unfortunately, she can't retain information. And she's getting, kind of upset with herself.
Once she starts going crazy, just start spiking her food with sleepy pills. That's all you need to do.
Can't do that. Can't do it.
Can't drug your own grandmother? Your own mother?
I looked into it. It's not legal. I was thinking of melatonin cough drops, but then it said that could conflict with her medication. So
damn it.
Can't do it. But as I said, her routine is not bothering us. And as far as I know, unless your father's telling you something different, we're okay with it. But it's just those moments with her plans to go upstate always seems to be contentious. And your uncle was over yesterday. No, was it yesterday? 2 days ago. 2 days ago. And we were having a conversation. It was just the three of us and Bo.
Imbo.
And he kind of finally saw what he didn't usually see with grandma in terms of, oh my God, she's not letting this go. Like,
Yeah.
welcome to your sister's world. 5 months, right? 5 months Susan dealt with us. Did you notice what's behind me? Can you see it?
Oh, we'll have to send that to Jen. Take the picture. Yeah, that's mom's
Frame.
award that I've been holding on to for how long?
Put it in a frame, and I kept it low so people could see
So
it.
yeah,
But I think it's
nice.
behind my.
Honestly, you might just have to put it up to the wall. Just hang it there.
I
Otherwise, you're just kind of behind
see
the.
it.
It's behind you.
Like in that area there. Yeah, I'll aim for that
You're gonna
area.
need a thing of
Oh, another one.
Yeah, you're gonna need a thing of like a whole award shelf, if you will.
Yeah.
So
Start lining them up now.
start line up. We're at number 1 right now. All right, Mom. We have a lot of articles to go through. I don't
Yep.
know where you want to start. I will say, for once, a lot of fun articles. Not all. It's been a while since
Yeah.
we've had just fun because everything's been the same in news. Truthfully, I don't think I've checked the news, like kept up with it in like a week
Yeah.
because it's been the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, it's
So,
kind of boring.
yeah.
It's the same old. I'm getting more frustrated too. I read these articles every day, and I'm like, you know what? Is anybody getting arrested here? I keep reading about people being indicted or,
Yeah.
or arrested. Nobody going to prison here. I'm like, when do these cases ever come? When do we ever hear the outcome? But I'll
Yeah.
tell you somebody who should get an award. Snake Man should get an award.
Oh, Snake Man. Man, you want to go right to that one first?
146 times this man has either injected or been bitten by the snake.
1 second. Let me
Mr.
just.
Freed or Fried
Boom.
used to milk these snakes when he was a kid, and scorpions too as a hobby, and then he would inject himself with small amounts of it, hoping to amp up his immunity,
Immunity to
create an
poisons.
immunity for it.
I remember
But
there was like I don't want to call it a craze, but I remember that there was a bunch of people that were trying to do this, like probably back in like the earlier 2000s, I would say, and like all of them failed. So
well, apparently I was
yeah.
intrigued because the article had said, "Oh, don't the his TikTok video is not for the faint of heart. Don't watch it," because apparently he did a double, a Mamba and something else, and it was not pretty. Whatever he went through, but obviously survived it. So anyhow, Columbia University picked up on this, and they are using his blood because they've identified 2 antibodies that neutralize venom. And part of the problem with antivenom is you have to have enough for each type of snake. So by doing it with his sort of general antibodies, since he's building it up to all different snake bites, is that they might be able to come up with a more universal antivenom for people. There's quite a few individuals that die every year from snake bites.
Snake bite. I want to see if I can find it. TikTok video. All right, let's see. Where's the man who?
What?
I kind of want. I want to see what the TikTok Team Venom Man battling snake venom. Let's see.
Ugh.
Does it have the? Oh, it doesn't have the actual.
Well, one of the articles, if it wasn't embedded in the article I sent, I thought there was one of the articles that said, don't watch this if you're pretty gruesome or whatever. I
It's
don't know.
pathetic. It's
He even
pathetic.
said, he has a couple bites where he was in the hospital, the arm, he almost died. Okay, great,
The things we do for antivenoms, but then again,
Yeah.
not having to worry about poisonous snakes and poisonous stuff anymore would be pretty nice. But
Well, and his point was obviously don't try this at home. Like he was emphatic that it's not something that you could just do as a hobby. Like supposedly he knew what he was doing, even though he made a couple bad judgments in the process. Not something I would say somebody should do on their own. You have to kind of be monitored when you do something like that.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. But
how much money, Mom? How much money would it cost? They have to offer you to do this?
nothing. I'm not doing it ever.
Ma, it's just one snake bite.
No. No.
If they gave me $20, I'd give it a shot.
Oh, get out of here. You would not.
20 bucks
Listen
is
to
all
you.
I would need. Antivenom tested on mice. So I I guess I've always wondered why. I know they experiment with mice on this stuff, right? Like they'll
Yeah.
do it with mice, but I always wonder if mice ever develop the antibodies because they're so small, right? Have we ever seen the antibodies? Have we ever seen a mouse survive uh, high dosages of venom like that or poison?
Well, mice is food for snakes, so they're going to
Right.
zap them till they're dead to eat them, if
Yeah.
they even bother to zap them. But it doesn't, to my mind, based on biology, when you test it, it's a small creature, so you're going to use a little bit of
Little
time,
right.
very small amounts, to build up the antibody.
So I guess my
Um,
question is why did this guy have to do it when we could have just done it in mice?
he wanted to do it. This was his thing,
Yeah.
and he started. I forget how long ago, when people weren't thinking about that as much. Like, it wasn't as big a deal. He
Right.
started doing it just as a hobby. He would milk his snakes and the scorpions, which a lot of people do. That's weird.
Oh.
But in the process, I guess in milking, he diluted some of the venom, and he put small amounts in himself to see if I could build up antibodies to the snake I own. And then over time, I guess he either owned different reptiles or said, hey, I'm going to try and do it with different snakes and see if I can build up my antibody to it.
I would love to ask this guy, like mentally, when he was younger, what was the turning point where it was just like, I wonder if I can just start dosing myself with venom, right? Because there had to be a turning point where you would go from milking to. My guess
My
is he
guess,
got bit by something, and he was like, "Oh,
right, I
I'm
was going to
okay."
say he probably experienced, which I think a lot of people do at the time. You get bitten by them a couple times, you get some venom in you, and after a while, you're like, well, how do I keep snakes and not have to worry about that?
That's a good point.
Oh, I'll build up antibodies to it. But I don't know. I didn't read his whole story. It was just an article about what he did. I'm sure if he hasn't written a book yet, I'm sure it's a TikTok.
Yeah.
But,
No, no.
that's a lot of times. Hundreds of times is a lot.
I saw there's some scorpion. I don't know which scorpion it is, but apparently, if you can get a liter of their, like 1 liter of their, I guess it's venom, is like $350,000 a liter or something like that.
To milk a scorpion?
Yeah, so if you can get a liter of this special type of scorpion, it's crazy.
Oh, I was going to say, because scorpions all over the South. If you tell me that, we're going down there now. We're going to start milking them, Chris.
Yeah, that will do. Hold on, I want to see which one it is. Hold on. Okay, you ready, Mom?
Yeah.
The Death Stalker scorpion has the most expensive venom in the world. It is $39 million dollars per gallon. High prices due to complex composition, harvesting methods, medical implications. So it's used in a lot of cancer, like to stop cancers, rheumatoid arthritis,
right.
various diseases. $39 million a gallon, Ma. I feel like I can do that in a day if you give me enough of them.
Oh, that's crazy.
I don't know.
It must be hard to get. It must be very rare. Death Stalker.
Where can I find? I'm just curious. So
Himalaya Mountain.
raincoat sleep
Sahara Arabian Desert.
and Central Asia and so I guess they're not that.
Well, it looks like Western India. So it's Asia. Middle East and Asia is where they're located.
Wow,
Ugh.
that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Huh. So not giving you guys any ideas, but if you need to make cash quick, if you have to make some money quick, you know who does need money though?
Who?
The Hawk Tour girl.
Oh, we're back.
She's
to her.
back.
Oh,
She's shown
God.
up. Making her way back, trying to do a full rebrand after her absolute shit show of a cryptocurrency. Remember her whole Hawk Tour coin, the rug pull?
Yeah.
This is more so about obviously the crashing econ. It's freaking the Commonwealth Times, so you know it's going to be very left leaning. But there's one thing that I do kind of agree with them on. It talks more so about the global currency of doing a like Trump's crypto and whatever. I do, you know me, I'm not a big fan of these cryptocurrencies and whatnot, but they do bring up a good point. The amount of people that are just buying things without thinking because their favorite celebrity started it is getting a little ridiculous. They keep
Yeah.
failing. The Trump one did very well when he was becoming president. Remember the Trump coin, and then they did a Melania coin, which I don't think did very
Yeah.
well. But like stuff like that, which is kind of like, let's be honest, they're quickly becoming get rich quick schemes. Like the amount of bots on Twitter that are just promoting the crap out of these um, new coins or whatever is just
Hmm.
destroying the potential for financial growth in the younger generation. So, like for instance, the Hawk Tuah girl, which is why they're talking about it. She did that huge rug pull. That really wasn't her fault. Clearly, there was someone up top that was doing like pulling the strings. A
Yeah.
lot of people made a lot of money, but people only invested in it because she's a celebrity who said this is going to work and it's going to be great. When in reality, none of these have ever worked like that. There's always a people at the top that get super wealthy because they promote the crap out of it, and then they pull it
Yeah.
at the beginning. But I will say I do agree with this article. I think these cryptos are getting a little out of hand.
Well, I mean, they're trying to bring the crypto market is trying to get a second wind as an alternative to currency, regular traditional currency market. And my understanding is, the crypto market is dollar for dollar. It's just digital currency. I'm not so much against that. When you start getting into the coins, especially these, Bitcoin's something different.
Yeah.
That has value. You buy as a market,
Right.
buy, sell, up, down, all that good stuff. In terms of, these I don't know, meme, what do you call them,
I
NFTs or
guess
whatnot.
shit tokens, as we call them.
It's
Shit coins.
in our day you would buy something in a bubble gum. It's equivalent to a sports card, right?
Yeah.
You're gonna spend money,
Well,
you're gonna get it, you could trade it, whatever. Is it gonna be valuable tomorrow? Maybe not. If it gets
yeah, when you
ruined,
look at it that way.
value. So it's one way of looking at it. Um, but when you're getting into the investment world, it's one thing when you're buying something and you're getting something physically, like a trading card in exchange. When you're in the investment world and you're doing it and you
That's
can
what.
manipulate the value in real time, I think that's where something has to be regulated, or there's a little bit of a problem with that. You can't keep doing this because then everybody's going to start doing it.
Right. And
You know,
then the ones that do well are these guys that start these coins and then they get some celebrity to rally behind it and then they know people will buy it. Like for instance, excuse me, Antonio Brown,
yeah,
remember him, the football player? Someone just pays him to promote some crypto coin. Everyone follows him to figure out what coin it is. They follow that, bump it up, and then everyone just sells. So it's not illegal to do, but it is. It does feel like I forget what it's called. I remember Dave Portnoy got kind of in trouble for it when he invests in a company.
hmm
Tell me if you remember this. This is kind of before he was just getting famous. Um, no offense, Dave Portnoy, but he would do trades online for people to watch, kind of like live stream it,
yeah,
and that would arguably manipulate the market because the viewers would see him doing it, so they would invest as well with him, like small dollars. I don't know
right.
what that's called in the sense of, I mean, I guess it's technically market manipulation, but that's illegal on the NASDAQ and stuff. But for some reason, it's okay. Well, it has to do with the unregulated parts of cryptocurrency. But if you do that on crypto, it's fine.
Right. And there's a little bit of a difference though. If I'm a celebrity, for instance, Ryan Reynolds promoting T-Mobile, right? He's getting paid to do that.
Right.
And we know he's a paid advertiser. He's not, and he might make money off of that particular item if he's a stockholder of it, right? And if he gets stock in exchange
Right.
for doing it. So yes, he has a vested interest in promoting it and getting money back out of it. It's something a little bit different with the crypto because they're promoting it. They are what is the coin, right? I mean, the people are only getting it because of that individual. So I think that's where you run into problems because they are able to manipulate it. Now, there's intentional manipulation, like in terms of Portnoy. I don't know if he's intending to manipulate the market or if he was just trying to provide some sort of investing service.
Well, he was more
And
so doing it for entertainment, right? So
right,
yeah, that
right.
they tried to get him on Mark.
Disclaimer. Whenever you do that, they require a disclaimer that this is not indicative of your performance and blah blah
Right.
blah. That's normally to protect, say, Portnoy from saying, "Hey, I invested in something you told me to." No, I didn't. You got to make your own research. Blah blah blah. So I just don't know. I don't understand the value of these only because, like I said, the difference is you can't easily manipulate, say, a baseball card in real time.
Right.
It takes time to build it
Takes
up. It
year
takes
it
time
takes
to go
years.
out to collect. Well, not necessarily, but you got to go out, you got to buy them, you got to collect them,
Right.
you got to hold on to them, you got to destroy some to increase the value, making it rare. Blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm.
With this other stuff, I don't know. It seems like it's going to have to be regulated to some extent, especially the NFTs, the meme coins. I don't know so much about Bitcoin or the Ethereum, the individual coins. They're itching to do something with those too because we
Think
just have too
I
much.
I am someone that thinks that those have to be regulated because I've seen the dark side of. I have friends who do those rug pulls all the time. I should say acquaintances. I wouldn't really consider them friends, but it's too easy to do. If my acquaintance who doesn't even have a high school degree can do this, there's a problem, right?
High school diploma, yeah.
High school
Well,
diploma,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, but this is how the stock market started. The Titans would manipulate stocks, right?
yeah,
Build it up, and then dump it all really fast, and people got screwed. And we wound up having all sorts of regulations and laws put in place.
yeah.
So,
They have
as
to do
more and
it.
more people start getting screwed from this, uh, you know, or the flip side is, you know what? Nobody's gonna. People gonna learn pretty fast. Don't do that. You're gonna get burned.
Yeah, that's
Don't.
why. That's why I think it's so stupid to invest in these cryptocurrencies unless it's Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever. Speaking of money,
Speaking of another
yeah,
waste for young
yeah.
people,
Federal Job Corps spends up to $764,000 per graduate. Participants go on to earn 17K annually.
yeah.
Ah,
So this is another great labor
and
department program
yeah, go ahead.
for 16 to 24-year-olds. Many of them are runaways, ex-convicts. They have no high school diploma. They are put in dorms where they are allowed to get their GED and some VOTEC training. And after exiting the program, fewer than half of them continue to have a job even a few months out.
Oh,
Some do get a job.
yeah.
And the job they wind up getting is, an hourly rate, $17,000 annually. So we as taxpayers, now that 764,000, that's one of these schools. That's what they
Right.
charge for their students involved. Um, it's a ridiculous amount of money. And by the way, most public schools you can get your GED. You don't have to go to a dormitory and
Right.
do it. You can also get VOTEC training through most public schools. The issue is these young individuals, many of them have flunked out or they don't attend the school. Okay, so let's dump more money at the problem and create new schools. And it is fraught with I don't want to say corruption, but alleged where is some of this money going?
Right.
Same story as before. They're underperforming.
It's not the first time I've heard this story. Go ahead.
Exactly, exactly. And yeah, and for this, the benefit is you get $17,000 annually as a salary. Whoop de doo. $764,000. That's more than an Ivy League education, right?
Yeah,
And for
wow.
that, 17,000.
The national cost per
So
graduate. Wow.
ridiculous. So the Trump administration they're not completely stripping it. There were some people who responded to the article. I read some of the people's comments. There were a few people in there who said, "Yeah, these things are a nightmare. It's just a glorified, like juvenile prison for these kids. These
Yeah, it seems
fights
like
every
it.
day." But there were a couple others that said, "You know what? It wasn't great, but I was able to get a job that wouldn't have happened. Turn my life
Right.
around."
There's
And
definitely some people who it's more so getting off the streets, getting your life together. Sometimes that might be the benefit than the job itself. Some of them gets them back on the right path if they come from gangs, if they come from if you had two parents that were drug addicts or whatever or abusive.
right,
It's a great way to get started on the path. But I will say this is probably for 16 to 24-year-olds. This is supposed to be kind of the midway point for you to start getting your life together after, right? Like we can get you a job, but obviously we don't want you shouldn't have this job for the rest of your life. You should keep continuing to grow, right?
well, yeah. I mean, I don't. They didn't go into detail about the types of jobs
Right.
necessarily. I'm sure they're entry level jobs. There's nothing
Nothing
wrong
wrong
with
with
that.
that.
Again, the service they're giving a GED. Well, I don't need to spend as a taxpayer for dormitories and whatnot for someone to get their GED. I don't need to do it so they can do VOTEC training. We already subsidize that through high schools and through your taxes. This just became another one. as many of the individuals alluded to in their comments, this is just another money grabbing machine. So they put a few kids, and mind you, some of these facilities are barely filled. There's hardly any kids in it.
Right.
So it's just another scam to bilk taxpayers out of a lot of money. They don't talk about what the administrators are making at these schools,
Yeah,
but I
really.
am sure now that it's been exposed, someone's going to get in there and see that this is another ripoff of the U.S. taxpayers for little to no benefit for the people in the program. So the Trump administration has already cut it, but they didn't cut it entirely. I guess they see some value in some of the schools that do have some good performance. But overall, this is another one of these I scratch my head saying, who knew this?
Yeah.
As a taxpayer, who's reporting on this? Why wasn't I made aware that these things are just total financial sucking machines, which is what they are?
Yeah. I mean, if they're not going to cut it, they're going to drastically, like, those numbers don't even make sense for how much
Right.
you're putting in and how much you're getting out. So that,
Exactly.
guys, that would be that would be like making a product that costs $20 to make and only selling it for $3.
Well, no,
Right.
it's even more extreme than that.
Yeah.
You could give 7 people $100,000. That's a great way to start. They could start a business. They could buy a house.
That's a good point too. Yeah, I didn't even go that approach.
At that one school versus 17,000 annually. That's it's. I'm not saying that's not a bad job to me. To your point, you're not going to support a family on that. But talk about a colossal waste. You'd be better off investing the $764,000 and create some sort of trust fund and give money out that way.
Right.
It's only $17,000 to be getting. So it's just, again, it was set up, and I'm sure as they start investigating it further, you're going to find kickbacks, you're going to find people getting paid under the table, you're going to find
Right.
all the tax dollars are supposed to go to certain things. It's just, it's a shell game. It's a scam.
Mother, where does the money for lotteries come from? Is that purely just tickets, or does the government does state governments put money
As
in?
far as I know, that's funded by people who buy tickets.
Oh wow, really?
And the come on is, well, half the money is going to go towards the education of that area. So any state involved gets a piece of it to put towards their education. That's often what they'll say. So
For the
believe it or not,
lottery?
yeah, all
Wow.
that money, lottery money, is used to fund educational tax programs, whatever, whatever.
So if the winning number is $1 billion, does that mean that
Yeah.
is that before having it, or is that after having it?
Not sure, and I think it might depend on the lottery.
Lottery, okay.
Like Mega Millions,
I was gonna say,
Powerball versus one. It might just be the scratch offs because those are usually state based scratch offs.
Right.
But it's yeah, that's how they get people. Well, ask your grandmother. Oh, I lost, but I funded education. Good for you, mom.
That's
Good for
that's
you.
the
That $5.
damn.
to the job
It's kind of sad to think that we spend, what is it, like 1.2 billion just on lottery tickets then as a country. Yeah, that is
Disgusting.
pretty crazy. Yeah, I don't know. What else do we got? Oh, speaking, you know who can use some jobs? You know who can use some jobs? The people at EA. The people at EA. Electronic Arts lays off hundreds and cancels Titanfall 3.
Yep.
Ooh.
300 to 400 job cuts. 100 of them at Respawn, which I guess is a
Respawn.
subdivision of the company.
Oh,
Respawn.
that's oof.
Canceling
You're gonna
Titanfall's game, but apparently they weren't far along in that anyhow, so it wasn't that big a deal. The project called R7, which was the extraction shorts in Titanfall universe. I don't know what that means.
I can tell my mom has not been sleeping well.
Yeah, I don't
can
know what
tell.
that means.
No, extraction shooter set in Titanfall universe. So Titanfall.
Oh, that's my own handwriting. Shooter.
Yeah,
Okay.
Titanfall. Again, I won't go into too much detail, but Titanfall was a game that was very. It was kind of ahead of its time. Like that came out when I was high school, definitely high school, and then they made the first one. Because of that game, a lot of games got ideas from it. So everyone's been waiting for Titanfall 3 because I don't even know when Titanfall.
Well, they're gonna be waiting a lot longer.
Yeah, Titanfall 2.
So much for that.
Yeah, so Titanfall 2 came out in 2016. So it would
Yeah.
almost be 10 years since Titanfall came out. But
Yep. Don't hold your breath. It's
Yeah,
not coming up
we got some
now.
time. But oh yeah, so Respawn is known for Apex Legends, which is a very
Yep.
popular game that is actually made the same way as Titanfall. So like
Right.
they used everything to make the original Titanfall into that game, and it's done very well.
Okay.
But yeah, it's depressing because everyone's been waiting for it. It's always been rumored that Titanfall 3 was coming out, but then EA's like, "Hey, bye."
Right.
Yeah. We have I know Jason's a big fan of those games.
Star
But
Wars Jedi titles also, but what's the FC 25? That's
that's
not FIFA,
that is
right?
FIFA. So they bought
Oh,
it
it is.
out and they redid it. Matt Sprague was telling
Didn't do
me
very well.
Alan's an addict. Alan is a legitimate FIFA addict, right?
But apparently it hasn't done well. Missed a lot of targets. The FIFA 25.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
no, it's terrible in comparison. But
yeah,
mom, ready? So uh I forgot what the actual statistic is, so I might be a little off on this. But you know Grand Theft Auto 5, like the really that Grand
yeah.
Theft Auto, right? That game did incredibly well in the sense of how many copies it sells. I mean, I don't know how
Yeah.
many millions of dollars it does. It might do $1 billion every year, right? Just in transactions alone on FIFA, it beats out Grand Theft Auto. That's how
Oh,
much.
wow.
90% of that is Alan Kinsey. Sorry,
Leave
Alan.
Alan
Yeah,
alone.
I forget what the actual statistic is. Matt Sprague told me that before, or like literally yesterday. And so even though the game itself doesn't do very well for FIFA itself, 25,
Yeah.
they still make so much money in the transactions. It probably doesn't
Mm.
matter to them, right?
All right.
So, but yeah, so
It reduced its booking estimates for the fiscal year for FIFA 25.
right, because this year would be FIFA 26, right? All sports games are a
Yeah.
year, but kind of like cars. Um, but let's get our hopes a little higher here. More importantly, a game we've been waiting even longer for, called Half-Life 3, just got announced that it is fully playable. Now, Mom, this is an even bigger deal than Titanfall because Half-Life 3 is made by Steam, right? It's Valve.
Yeah.
So Steam is a big. Half-Life is, as I said with Titanfall, how it's the basis of all games or of a lot of games. Half-Life is literally the basis for all games, right? So there's a very famous game called Gary's Mod. And Gary's Mod is basically, that's a game that Mike, Kenny, and I play sometimes, where it takes all the assets from video games and you can kind of do what you want with them. So that's what this game did, and why. So this game did so well, they made Gary's Mod so that people can do what they want. So this game is huge because that's why we have modding nowadays. That's why we have like the ability to modify video games yourself.
Okay.
The character models, like the ability to import character models and make games. Like a lot of before we had like, I wouldn't say before, but right, all video games are made in an engine of some sort. People have made video games just within this video game, which is pretty cool.
But if you look at the subheadline, this may go without saying at this point, but take the latest rumor with a grain of salt. They're
Mom,
saying
you
that
shut your mouth. You shut your mouth, mother. Don't take away our hope. No, but they said that I saw a bunch of things on this. This is not just this article. There was a bunch of articles on it, so that's why we have some hope. But they say the rumor is right now there is a fully playable version of the game out there that Valve has been working on. So that's a big deal. But what's also cool about Steam, because they make so much money, they make so many games in a year that even if it doesn't come out, we're still going to have some great games to play. So it doesn't really matter. And plus, they also just released the 20-year anniversary for the game. That's how old that game is. So that also kind of gives us some hope that they're working on something. Trump secures agreement to establish the United States Ukraine Restoration Investment Fund. Okay.
Yeah.
So we got to fix it. Gotcha.
I'm going to test the podcast, our followers. You know, we talked about we talked about Ukraine a lot, but if you remember towards the beginning when everybody couldn't write checks fast enough to Ukraine to help the poor, and said, and you and I talked about it, I'm like, I really don't care. I care about my own border, blah, blah, blah. But you watch, we're going to wind up paying. To have to
Mom called this one.
And here we are. and I mean, at least we're getting something out of it to some extent because this agreement is all about this is that the minerals in the earth that he's been trying to get
Right.
Zelensky to agree to,
To
blah blah
give.
blah. So for all we put in, at least we're getting something out of it.
Well,
What
remember,
always
not just Trump, right? This was like 3 administrations it took. This was Trump, Biden, Obama trying to get these resources, remember?
well, yeah, and something we always should keep in mind that it's the most corrupt country, right? It's
Right.
right up there, Ukraine, and as each year goes by, we learn more and more how corrupt this country is. So I'm a little bit leery about entering into any sort of partnership with this country. It's all well and good with the current administration. Who knows what the next administration and the one after that? You know, this could potentially turn into another. We're gonna be pumping a lot of money to rebuild a country that, you know, I'm torn in the sense that all right, at least my border is now shut down and safer. At least we've done that.
Mm-hmm.
We still have a lot of work to do to save our own country, but we do to some extent. Unfortunately, we're too involved in starting this war with, you know, the nefarious people in previous administrations. So I can justify it in that sense, and at least we're getting some money, something out of it with the rare earth. But I just laugh, you know, here we are again, another war, another blow up, and we're gonna pay to rebuild it.
We're going to have to do Palestine too once this is over. So once that's over, I'm sure we're going to be rebuilding Palestine or Israel.
Gaza, yeah. Well, and you know,
Yeah. I don't know why I couldn't
Japan
think of
yesterday or 2 days ago said, you know, we might retaliate with the tariffs by not, because they hold a lot of our treasuries, right?
Right.
And by, you know, forcing us to start paying them. And I just shake my head, and you know, I always love that picture of Detroit after the war and Japan after the war. 20 years in, you know,
Yeah.
rebuilt that country after World War II. They bombed us. They brought us into the war unsolicited, and we wound up having to go and you know help
Yeah.
rebuild these countries. And here we are. Granted, it's
Many
many
years later.
decades. Yeah, but it still irks me. I'm still alive of a generation that remembers like grandparents who were in it and parents who were involved. Like you know, and here we are, a country we wound up pumping so much money into, and now you know they're trying to come after us over tariffs. Okay. And still some of our cities are falling apart.
As long
Literally
as they
falling
don't take away my animes, we're good. But I'll
Yeah.
tell you this, you take away that, and I swear to God, we'll give you another Nagasaki.
Well, you know, there was a even with the new administration in, there was a headline this weekend about in April, a man was just arrested. He and when I read the headline, I'm like, we're all going to hell. I mean, this world is just New York City is just a shithole. It's hell. He was arrested for robbing a dead person on the subway, and this man on
R
the
word,
subway.
gotta mute that.
Okay,
More
sorry,
work. No, you're good.
but you can edit it, right?
Yeah.
Anyhow, he assaulted this individual on the subway. I was saying to your dad, like, I don't know, this headline is just so bad on so many levels. An illegal man robs a guy, a dead person. Why is there a dead 37-year-old sitting on this? Like, it's a nonchalant thing. When nobody, not saying they didn't question it. Apparently, the poor individual was young. He died, heart attack. I forget what it was. And this, you know, garbage individual, this illegal, happens to do this. Fortunately, they caught him and everything else. But I said, you know what? It's still hell in that city. I mean, is it during the day?
Yeah, New York City's a shit show.
Right. And the blow up was, and I unfortunately had to get the New York Times for your grandmother because she loves the puzzle and it keeps her occupied. But naturally, they go on and on about this man who was arrested. This man. Nowhere did they mention the man's illegal.
Yeah.
Would never would have happened in the first place if he wasn't even allowed in the country. So, you know, they conveniently leave that aspect out. So, anyhow, while we're so busy working to fund repairing other countries and their cities, we're still back to take a look around. It's not pretty in this country in some places. So,
Yeah.
we need
Before
to
we
start
start
making a
building
little
some
bit
other
of an
things.
investment in our country. Yeah.
Right. Well, again, Mom called it again. We will be
Yeah, well, you
fixing
guys
this.
are
Yeah, it's
the
not.
young part. Well, I'm not. I'm no savant. As everybody in my generation, we see this over and over again. You know.
Yeah. But we're going to have to make some money quick. So maybe we should get some documents from the Titanic. Letter written on board the Titanic before it sank sells for almost $400,000. I'm going to be honest with you. I feel like that's a little cheap for the Titanic. I feel like it should be a lot more.
You know, it's kind of funny though. I'm thinking this. I go, mind you, it wasn't discovered like in the wreckage or anything. It was just written on the boat before it sank. The man who wrote it survived, right?
Right.
He went on to talk about his experiences and whatnot. So, I mean, it's fine, but it's really just a letter that was written on the boat by somebody who survived the Titanic.
Oh, it's not like it was
It's not
found in the wreckage.
right. That's what I'm saying.
Oh,
It's not.
okay.
It's
Well,
not.
then I would say that 400,000 is a lot
Right.
for
It was
that.
or before it sank. The guy's name is Archibald Gracie. He also wrote about the sinking, and he made it onto a floating boat. Um, they eventually got him into one of the floating rescue boats, and he died complications of the hypothermia, and he had diabetes, whatever. But I mean, it's interesting. It's a part of history. He wrote it on the boat, April 10th, 1912. Um, and then it goes, somebody just has a fascination with the Titanic, and they wanted to own a piece of the survivor. But yeah, it was kind of funny. I'm like, well, technically, it's not like it's something that came from the Titanic. I guess he had it on him when he jumped. I didn't
Yeah,
get that part of
maybe.
it.
I honestly, he
Maybe
could just
it
make it up. He could
I
just
guess
be like, you could just like, yeah, I got this piece of paper, wrote on it. I mean, it does have to prove that it's from the Titanic,
it's
right?
stationary from the
But you know
Titanic.
what that is? That seems like he took. What he probably did was wherever he was probably on one of the higher end parts of the boat that gave him like a little notepad that came with his reservation. Yeah, and they just
Yeah.
kept the notepad. For all I know, he's sitting at home right now just writing each one out, right? Using the rest of the paper.
Dead.
Guys, I
He's
have
dead.
50 of them. Yeah, I know.
He died in 1912. He died
Pass it
that
on to
same
his
year.
kids.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I mean, it is a piece of nostalgic history, and it is very interesting. And he was documented having been rescued and did write books about it. So, because the letter was attached to him, is of value.
Right.
But it's just kind of a funny thing. I'm like, well, technically, it's not like it's an artifact. It was just written on the boat that day.
Right.
You know.
The next one is Meta's fight for the basically they're trying to get rid of that monopoly. They've been trying to get rid of that monopoly for a while. But apparently, so you might be able to explain this a little better from the actual court system standpoint. But now that TikTok's back and it seems to be staying for good, I think that allows Facebook to not have the monopoly anymore. But if the judge decides that TikTok's not like Instagram or Facebook, they'll still have a monopoly. So right now, Zuckerberg's working on something to basically compete with TikTok. So obviously we have Instagram and Facebook, which I feel like that right there, that kind of is a monopoly because that's two of the biggest platforms, and then TikTok's like right there on the left,
Yeah.
And then I know Twitter's in there somewhere, but Twitter, I don't really think it keeps up with Facebook and Instagram. It doesn't really work that way, in a sense. So
I don't know specifically this, and you didn't send me the articles. I don't think.
I
So
figured
didn't
you
get
were
to-
gonna. I figured you didn't have the time
Well,
with
no, I
Graham.
could've- well, you came in with this. What I will say is the bigger issue right now, which will determine a lot of these, is Google.
Right.
So Google is really, I don't want to say they're sweating, but they should be because uh, it's becoming a monopoly. It's too big.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be that will be the precedent for all these other companies in terms of social media and these various platforms. Because if you force them to break up based on what they do, now you can apply that to these other companies. And similar to the telecommunications, AT&T, too big in time, you got to diversify, and that's how we wound up with Verizon and
T-Mobile.
right later, even long distance carriers because they
Right.
broke that out and all that. That was in 1984, I want to say.
Yeah, that one was a little bit. That one was a little bit bigger of a deal, though, in the sense of, unlike social media, which is just on your computers.
Yes.
AT&T, the problem where that was an even bigger monopoly is because they weren't allowed to use the towers. Remember? So you would have a tower in an area, and then it's like, oh, you can't even have service in that area, right? Remember?
Well, it's not just towers, literally phone lines.
Yeah.
So the company put that in. They invested in it, and now you get an issue with, well, Verizon can't put their own poles in, and you can't have the next company put their own.
Right.
They have to share that infrastructure, and that became part of it too, because physically the apparatus, but it's kind of similar to the railroad. We
Yeah,
can't put in competing railroad lines. There's only so many railroads you can put in on the earth.
exactly. That's
So in
the
social media, it's a different realm. It's a digital realm.
right.
It's
It's just their
but
servers. That's really it.
then it comes down to who controls the information, who controls the cost, like cable companies, right? And you know, what is there a fair market for people to go to, or are we forced to just use one mammoth thing like Google
Right.
or Facebook or whatever? So that will be the crux of probably the argument. Now he's what I didn't see the article. He wants to create something that will compete with TikTok.
Yeah. So he has something called Threads, which is through Instagram, but I think
Yeah,
he's trying to make it its own like separate social media. But basically, the concept is as long as TikTok's allowed here in America, there's
yeah.
no. You could make the argument there's no monopoly. But if TikTok ends up having to go for some reason, then Zuck's forced into a monopoly, which I'm sure he wants. But then we have an actual issue because then he's just monopolizing the social media space because Instagram or Twitter's something.
Is he keeping out competitors? Just, it's not necessarily his problem that he has a large, like Amazon, for instance,
Right.
dominates the online market area, as far as I know. But it's not as though they're keeping other people out. They
Right.
have access to shipping, they have access to the internet, they have access to reach out to customers. That they don't, they have the opportunity to build that infrastructure if they want.
I think Meta is investing in a lot of things that would be considered competitors, but because they're getting a piece on the side as investors or shareholders, that's where it
Right.
gets a little dicey.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I mean, I'd have to really read into it to find out what they're saying here. But the crux of it is you have to allow other companies. In theory, I mean, we know that this goes on. I mean, I'm still shaking my head how cable companies get away with what they get
which
away
is
with.
crazy. Cable
Yeah,
companies and internet providers. I can't get
yeah,
any other internet providers where I am. It's
right.
crazy.
Well, they get away with it to some extent because, well, you can go get a dish,
Yep.
right? There are alternatives,
Yes,
but
I can also I can also bring a spear to a war, but why would you do that? It doesn't make sense. It's too primitive.
well, right, and you should be allowed to have the best quality.
Yeah.
But it's also market driven too. As long as you can allow other cable companies to come in, then you get back to that. Well, whose line is it, and who has access to it, right?
Right.
And that's why for places like AT&T that took it on the chin, they're like, hey, we had to give it up. Why shouldn't they? Why shouldn't they have to share their lines and whatnot? I don't know enough about that industry to say good, bad, or indifferent, or if that's
Yeah.
what's going on. But that's the crux of it. So a lot of these places, you shouldn't be penalized for having a tremendous company that's done really well, like an
Right.
Amazon. But if your existence is forcing, or if you're buying up all your competitors to
Right.
control the price or
Because you
whatever,
have nothing else to do. Yeah.
well, or not, well, no, I mean it's a business model, and that's what the Titans used to do in the old age. They had them old days. They had the money. They started buying it all up, creating monopolies, and Rockefeller would talk to Carnegie, and they, that type of
Well,
scenario, and squeeze out the little guy.
did you mean
And that's why
Carnegie? What did you say? Did you mean Carnegie?
some people pronounce it Carnegie. I believe he pronounced it Carnegie.
Carnegie? Wow.
Yeah,
I hate that.
if you go to the not the museum, what do you call it? The place in New York City, some people will call it Carnegie. Anyhow, Carnegie, if that makes you feel better. So they would create monopolies just by working together and squeezing out. Oh, we got a competitor coming. How about we work together? You can't do that. Like
Right.
that's why they started this legislation, court cases to say, wait a minute, you can't squeeze out the little guy. He needs a chance to at least offer his services if somebody wants to partake.
Yeah. Gotcha. All right. I got two more that kind of go hand in hand. So chips aren't improving like they used to, and it's killing the console price cuts. So we talked about the Nintendo Switch 2, how it's a complete waste of money, all this stuff. They're blaming tariffs for the high price. I'm telling you right now, it has nothing to do with the tariffs. Nintendo just freaking needs money because they're realizing how freaking useless their console is. I don't think this console is going to do very well. Besides that,
Oh, we talked about this.
Yeah.
You said it was terrible.
there's no point. There's 5 games for it, and 2 of them are remasters. Anyway, that's not really the point here. we were talking with someone in chat the other day who was telling us about how the new Xboxes, the new PlayStations, all that stuff, there's no
Right.
point anymore because not only are you paying half a grand, or if not more now, for a console, you also have to pay a monthly subscription. You also have to pay for live services, whatever, to play with your friends. Okay. All that's doing is pushing people towards PC gaming, right?
Right.
And now these chips aren't improving from a console perspective because it's talking
Right.
about the CPUs basically.
Right.
The consoles themselves aren't, they're as good as they're gonna get, right? So
Right.
what I mean by that is, if these consoles start going down, why are they going to keep focusing on making console chips when they can focus on PC chips that just keep getting better? But we're also at that point technologically where
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we have this debate all the time, but I don't think computers are going to get much better anymore. So what I mean by that is, computers that we have, cool, I can upgrade graphics and stuff. But now we start getting into the supercomputers and the AI computers, quantum computers. That's going to be the next step. So where am I
Mm-hmm.
going with this?
Yeah.
Basically, what I'm saying is, the reason that there's no point in getting a console anymore is because, one, the price is way too high. And two, if I'm a company, seeing the prices of those go higher and I have to make my chips more expensive and put more into my product, more capital into my product, why don't I just make computer CPUs where I can make more of them because more people want the PCs instead? See what I'm saying?
Well, I'll tell you why. It's money trumps all. As long as there's a market, people will do it
Right.
because they'll make money. As long as you have, and maybe it's a timing issue. They're trying to maximize it now until that time comes when PCs get to the point where you don't need it. So they're filling that gap. As long as, the holidays come and mom and dad want to spend $500 on something to give their kid the latest and greatest, as long as there's some market and they can make some money out of it, they're going to do it.
Right. So if you're buying a console nowadays, like any, whether it's well, even handhelds, if you're buying a console, it kind of means that you lack the knowledge of what you can do on a PC, because there is nothing on a console that I can't do on my PC now, right?
Wait a minute, I'm looking at a Switch. That's a handheld.
Right, but there's nothing that's
PC
switch.
not yet handheld.
No, there is a PC handheld.
Okay, but they're not marketing enough because it's not a competitor, obviously, if they're still making these Switch and you still have to pay for these
Well,
games.
that's Nintendo though, right? Nintendo's competitor is the Steam Deck, right? The problem is a Steam Deck way more expensive. A Steam Deck, well, now a Steam Deck's probably about $600, as much as that is. But that's
Right,
a
so
full
for
computer, right? There's still more
right,
you can do with that than on the Switch.
right, but I don't need that for a 5-year-old going on an airplane trip. You know what I mean? Like as
Oh,
a
that's true.
parent, if that's the market for it, because I'm guessing it's for young people, they probably aren't marketing it to older people unless like a COVID experience where older people just want something to
Right,
do. Fine, that was a unique situation. And I'm sure there are some adult people in the market, but probably my guess is most of this is either for places where they don't have access to computers, which believe it or not, there are places in the world where they don't. But those type of places, they don't have the money for a Switch or for a
right,
handheld.
exactly.
Handheld is still a market because yeah, you could give a kid a phone, they could play games on the phone, but you still want something. And some parents like the idea of minimizing the amount of content. They want to
Right,
control the game. They don't want them having access to everything out there. So I still say as long as there's a market and somebody's willing to pay it, and I'm sure some Harvard grad is doing the research saying we can make these things and make money, or we could do it until PC gets to the point where they're doing a handheld like this, you
yeah,
know?
which are pretty damn
Because
close.
I know Nintendo, I've never heard of what you're talking about with your
The
PCs.
Steam Deck, you've seen it before. We've talked about it on the
I've
podcast.
never seen it, Chris, but Nintendo's a name I know as
Yeah.
a parent.
Um,
And I'm not in the tech world.
I
I'm sure a lot of your peers know what you're talking about.
yeah.
That's great, but Nintendo's a Switch is a universal term. Game Boy, universal. I know
Right.
what that is.
So what I would say, like, if someone came to me now, like, if you said 4 years ago, what's a great handheld device for my kid? If someone was to come up to me and say, I'm getting my 5-year-old something,
Right.
I would say if you want something simple, you get a Switch. If you want the best out of your money because it's going to cost you the same thing, go with the Steam Deck. Because one's a computer, you're getting two things in one. Otherwise, I feel like a Switch is a waste of money. The other thing with the Switch 2, Mom, is I feel like with the Switch 2, I feel like they're trying to chase what happened during COVID, right? Where everyone was bored, so like every woman I know bought a Switch, right? Remember?
As long as
This
there's
is
a
a moment.
market,
Yeah, but
somebody's going to buy it.
I don't think
And
that they're gonna do as well as the Switch one.
but remember, something as simple as an iPad when those first came out. I scratched my head. Do I want a tablet? Do I want an iPad? What's the difference? What's better? What's more compatible? What isn't? Blah blah blah. People are not necessarily comfortable saying, "Oh, here for $600, try this." That's a lot of money
Right.
to throw out in gaming, right? So a parent's going to go, or a person's going to go with what they know. I know Switch. I know Nintendo is probably decent. They may be wrong, but they're going to go with what they know. And that's why I say, if you market the hell out of something, people will be convinced that they need it. Oh, this is great. This is what I need. I know Nintendo. I know, the games. I had one when I was a kid. I'm sure it's great. Versus, oh no, you should go get a Steam thing. What? Okay, explain to me the
Right.
difference.
That's the simplistic. Right.
Never mind. Okay.
Yeah.
And we're not talking a couple $100 anymore. It's not like an iPod, 50, $60.
Yeah,
Now it's big
now they're,
bucks.
but all of them are getting that way. Like even the Xboxes are going to go up. You also still have to pay the monthly subscription. So, I mean, if talking about that alone, because like,
Well, that's the other side of it. We never had to do that with you guys because it was always games. You bought the game separately. There was no monthly subscription with
no,
the
that's not true,
with,
Mother. You did. You paid for a
not
monthly.
when you were little.
Oh yeah, not when we
No,
were little. Yeah, the
I'm
handheld
talking
ones, no.
handheld thing.
But once
Yeah.
all the, but Mom, okay, I guess let me put it this way: there's no handhelds anymore that are cheap, right? There's no, yeah.
Right.
Actually, when you think about it, there are no handhelds, right? The Switch is a handheld, but it's a console, right?
Right.
The
Right.
little Game Boy Advances that we had, or whatever you call them,
Yeah.
those were not.
You had to buy games
Yeah,
because there was no internet. There was no,
right. You
there
had
was
to.
no.
Yeah, that was it. Right now, the Nintendo, everything's digital, so now you have to pay subscription. Mom, see this button right here? See that right there?
Yeah.
You can't even use that button unless you pay a subscription.
Right.
Right? Like it's shit like that people are getting sick of it. So
Oh, sure.
yeah, like
Well, I used to get sick of buying the games because
yeah,
the games kept going up in price. They were all exactly the same
games
thing.
for this thing are going to be $90. That's more
Yeah.
than the console games. Yeah, and it's the same games over and over again. Like Nintendo hasn't had a new game in like 20 years. But
Right.
I mean, well, I won't lie to you. The new Donkey Kong game looks pretty cool, but it's not gonna change my opinion on the Switch 2.
Well, yeah. I mean, I understand what you're saying. I'm just, in general, if there's a market there, they're going to try and tap into it.
Yeah,
And to your point, if people tire of this or they clue into the PC versions, this will tank. But you know, at some point,
uh,
it's usually like the holiday time when they have their biggest bang for the buck. And it's right after the holidays, all of a sudden you start hearing, oh, somebody's struggling and they may
yeah,
not come out here,
yeah,
right? So that's the real test. If it makes it through the major selling retail season, barring, recession, inflation, election year, everyone has an excuse for every Christmas but or every holiday. But it's market based. If there's a market out there, people want it, you know, here you go. Not everybody's as tech savvy as you and your peers who are older and could do this. A lot of young kids are learning faster like
right.
you guys because in that world. But for a parent, they're a little skeptical where, $90 a game. What?
Yeah,
I didn't pay that much. My parents didn't pay that much for my Game Boy.
yeah, really. I don't even know what a Game Boy was back when I was younger. I don't know how much those cost.
They weren't a lot when you started. I remember like the little iPod, the square ones that they had.
Yeah.
That was like 50, $60, and that was a lot of money.
Oh wow. So this kind of goes back to the chips. This is kind of the second part of the article.
Right?
So China's making their mega chip factory because they don't want to. I was wondering what your thoughts were on this, because does this mean they've kind of given up on Taiwan? They're like, we'll just make the chips ourselves.
I don't know. Good question. I haven't heard much about that other than they keep threatening. There was some story about a dam, and this is why they'll never take over Taiwan. I was like, oh, too much info. It was a bad week for me to be going
Yeah.
going in deep about that. But Huawei is that's a company. They got into a lot of trouble here in the
Yeah.
U.S. and I think in Canada too.
They had those
Too
cell
much
phones that were
Chinese.
giving data, remember? Those special
Yeah,
phones.
yeah.
I remember
Facility.
so many celebrities got those phones, and then when they heard about it, they were like, "Oh, gotta get rid of this." Like Rogan had one for a week or two, and he got rid of it.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I was wondering what this meant because. Oh, is this
No,
their? Oh,
no.
that's the.
China is, they're ahead of the game. They've got the cheap labor. They just need the resources. But it's scary to think that whatever Taiwan has, maybe they're anticipated they're just going to take it anyhow and use their resources to make it themselves and not have
Right.
to make it on the islands. I'm not quite sure. I'd have to read the whole article, but it's you know, they're in a different world than we are. Unfortunately, it's a smaller. Their government is nimble enough to get in there and say, "Oh, throw the switch. Let's start doing it." In our country, it would take like a decade to start
Right.
building chips here, which is a shame, and that has to change because you know we just want basics like medications in this country that we have to start making here because we're relying everywhere else.
Right.
I found this a fascinating statistic. There's about what 1.3 billion people, Chinese Chinese people. Of that, only about 100,000 are communists.
Right.
Yet they control the nation. So different world than what we live in, not a democracy. They can do something like this, and it's from their perspective, smart thing to do. Everything relies on these chips, and
Yeah.
Huawei has the money to do it.
Yeah. I wonder who owns Huawei. I gotta look that up. But yeah. So I was just curious what your thoughts were on that one because if they I know they've been threatening to move in on Taiwan, but now we hear nothing. I wonder if that's because they realized that Putin was going to get what he wanted in the end, so they really couldn't use him to leverage Taiwan.
Well, I think the tariffs are making a huge difference. I think that put
Oh,
a
that's a good
pause
point
on a
too.
lot of things because nobody expected that. And our neighbor was stockpiling restaurant supplies.
Oh yeah.
Vans were coming over and putting it in the garage because they own a restaurant. They said in anticipation of the tariffs, we're going to order all the non-perishable stuffs now. So I'm sure if they're doing that, a lot of people are thinking to do that. And I think, the last headline I saw, because really I haven't been following it, I've been busy, was China blinked and they want to negotiate. All last week it was China's refusing, and now they want to negotiate.
Negotiate. Yeah.
Yeah, it becomes a case of everybody needs us more than we need them.
Yeah.
We say that, but we don't produce enough here. So we do need to get supplies, and everybody panics. Oh, it's going to cost a lot of money. Um, one person they interviewed said, "Hey, I've been paying a lot for the last 4 years. She hasn't made that much of a difference." But having said that, I think tariffs put a pause on a lot of things that other countries were thinking of doing. Not to say that China can't walk and chew gum at the same time. I'm sure they have designs on Taiwan, but I think it's paused because they're focusing on keeping their markets open and trading with as many people as possible.
Right.
And everybody's kind of at a pause because we are the main consumer. The Western world, especially the United States, we're consumers. We got
Yeah.
to have our Chinese stuff, right? Our foreign stuff.
All right, guys. We'll end it there. So the only thing that I have to promote, um, so I did. We had the podcast for last week, which was the live one that was posted on Tuesday on Spotify. Wednesday was the Expedition 33 video, which strongly recommend. That was that game I told you about. Uh, the
We
one with
didn't do the live one.
yeah, we did. We did a live one last weekend.
We did? I thought we couldn't do it.
Nope, we definitely
Oh,
no, we
okay.
definitely did the live one last week. Remember, we had no
I'm sorry.
questions. Yeah, um,
Okay. Oh, that's right.
yeah, and then so then Expedition 33 came out on Wednesday, and then
Mhm.
yesterday I posted a Game Pass roulette video on Played Up, so go check that out. Social media promo code stream links down below, and hopefully we will see you guys in the next one, and I'll see you at stream on Monday. Well, tonight when this comes out. So, all right, Mom, I think we're good. Sweet.